3 years ago, my younger brother became vegetative after a car accident. Everyone believed I was the murderer, including my wife. She used the child in her womb to force me into donating bone marrow to my brother, causing me to delay cancer treatment until I died alone at home. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself reborn, but I suspect my wife might have been reborn too. This suspicion isn't without reason. For instance, right now, she's standing before me with a pregnancy test stick and prenatal report, gently saying, "Honey, we're having a baby." Honey? Sarah Chin never called me that. She wouldn't even speak an extra word to me. In my previous life, I learned about her pregnancy during a company dinner. A colleague swapped her wine for juice, and that's how I discovered she was already 3 months along. Even the new intern knew, while her husband, was kept in the dark. No matter when, learning she was pregnant would have made me happy. I'd always wanted a child, longed for a real family. All these years, I've been terrified of the loneliness. "Honey, let's go to the dinner party. They're waiting for us." She very naturally linked her arm with mine, bringing us close together. But I knew my heart had already drifted far away from her. She wasn't wearing the clothes from her previous life, but rather a dress I had given her long ago. Since being reborn, I hadn't given her any more gifts. After all, she never liked them anyway. She didn't like me. Even the things I gave her disgusted her. She said my gifts were too expensive and flashy, just showing off. But I only wanted to give her the best within my means. Even the birthday presents I gave her would end up forgotten in some corner. Every time I saw the dust collecting on the gift boxes, I felt an overwhelming sense of helplessness. For 4 years of marriage, I kept trying to warm her heart, to hold her close, to bring back the way we were before we married. Now, I've let go. You can't forever nourish a venomous snake over your heart. By the time we arrived, my colleagues had already started enjoying themselves. Normally, I rarely socialized with them, focusing only on my work. Now that they've seized the opportunity, they took the chance to ask Sarah Chen, "Will you always love Seogu?" My hand tightened slightly. In my past life, I heard the answer I wanted. She said yes, but no one knew her nails were digging deep into my arm. It took immense effort for her to restrain herself from revealing her hatred in front of others. Even now, thinking back, I can still feel a faint ache in my arm. She said, "I will always love him and take good care of him." On the way back, her head rested on my shoulder the entire time. The driver glanced back and wore a horrified expression. My phone rang. It was finally happening. It was the hospital calling, and the voice on the other end excitedly told me, "Mr. Jason Gu has woken up." I put it on speaker, deliberately watching Sarah Chen's expression. Her eyelashes trembled slightly, her lips pressed tightly together, and a shadow of darkness flickered in her eyes. "Sarah, shall we go?" I asked her intentionally. I was waiting for her to erupt in fury like she did in my past life, cursing me for being heartless. But no, she smiled calmly at me. "I'll follow your lead." She really had been reborn just like me. In our previous life, when I merely suggested she go rest first, she'd explode like a cat startled by firecrackers, breaking down, raging, scratching, and hitting me while screaming insults. Without looking at her, I directly instructed the driver to the hospital. When we arrived, my parents were already there. "How dare you show your face?" My mother rushed over, ready to strike me, just as I braced to dodge. Sarah Chun stepped in front of me and seized my mother's wrist.
Both my parents looked shocked.
Given how well they understood the state of my marriage with Sarah Chun. "Sarah, what's gotten into you?" Sarah Chun pushed her back firmly. "As long as I'm here, no one is allowed to bully Ian Gu." My mother frowned at her, utterly bewildered. It was Jason Gu, weak on the hospital bed, who spoke up. "Sarah Chun, have you lost your mind? He's the one who did this to me." Sarah Chen's expression instantly turned icy as she enunciated each word. "You had it coming. The last time she stood up for me like this was 5 years ago, when we first met. I fell for Sarah Chun the moment I laid eyes on her. I can't explain why, but seeing her always so timid and cautious made my heart ache for her. She was my secretary back then, And she didn't even have money for a uniform. I had to lend it to her. Poverty is hard to hide. I knew from our first meeting that she must have grown up in hardship. But before I could even pursue her, she confessed her feelings to me first. She said she liked me, but the gap between us was too wide. So, she only wanted to express her heart, not expecting me to actually like her back. She had no idea how overjoyed I was when I heard those words. We got together soon after, and to give her a sense of security, I helped pay off her stepfather's debts. 6 months later, I proposed, and she said yes. The night before our wedding, Jason Gu came to see me. He brought a stack of photos, all featuring Sarah Chun as the subject. I couldn't bear to look past the third one. She was forced into taking them. It was clear she was still quite young then. The fear and despair in her eyes made my heart ache. And the person filming turned out to be her stepfather. Well, do you still want to marry this Warren? Ouchoo. That was the first time I laid hands on Jason Gu. When I heard the term Warren, ouchoo, my fury instantly surged to the crown of my head. I knocked him to the ground with one punch, leaving a clear mark on his face. He stared at me in shock, then got up with a mocking laugh. Just wait. I'll post all these photos online tomorrow. After saying that, he ran out, and I hurried after him. By the time I got outside, he had already been hit by a car. I became a murderer. My parents cut ties with me. Sarah Chin also called me heartless and even demanded, "Why wasn't it you who got hit by the car?" I never told her about the photos. That day, I finally understood why she was so resistant to going home. It was her most shameful, most painful memory. No matter what, I didn't want to reopen her old wounds. But because of this, Sarah Chun came to hate me. That hatred lasted until the day I died. After Jason Gu woke up, he needed a bone marrow transplant. It was during that physical exam that I was diagnosed with brain cancer. She used the child in her womb to threaten me, demanding I give up treatment and donate bone marrow to Jason Gu. In the end, Jason Gu recovered completely, while I was left terminally ill. Jason Gu didn't let me off because of that. He tortured me to death and inherited all my assets. Thinking of this, my hands trembled slightly. The hatred had never faded. Instead, it grew even more intense. Get out, all of you. Get out now. Sarah Chen's words, "You deserved it," sent my parents into a frenzied rage. They threw everything they could get their hands on in the hospital room. Sarah was still pregnant, so instinctively, I shielded her and quickly led her out of the room. "Are you okay?" She suddenly threw herself into my arms. "Honey, you're so good to me." After 3 years of resentment and coldness, I was no longer used to her taking the initiative to be close. I stiffly pushed her away, but she held on too tightly. Curses from my parents echoed from the hospital room. My mother sobbed to Jason Gu, "Your brother is a beast, an ungrateful wretch." My father chimed in, "We should have left him on the street to freeze back then. Jason wouldn't have suffered like this." I didn't hear the rest, as Sarah Chin suddenly stood on her toes and covered my ears. "Husband, you're nothing like that. Don't listen to their nonsense." I didn't say a word, turning to leave. Words like these, I've heard since childhood. I never thought that, even after all these years, hearing them again would still hurt. Sarah Chin jogged to keep up behind me. She ought to be in there too, cursing me. That's what she's always done. Her kindness now couldn't lessen the hatred in my heart one bit. Actually, Jason Gu and I aren't biological brothers. I was adopted by the Gu family. My parents had been married for 7 years without a child, so they adopted me when I was just 4 years old. But in the 4th year after adopting me, my mother became pregnant and gave birth to Jason Gu. From that day on, I heard them discussing how to dispose of me every day. Not eavesdropping, they deliberately raised their voices when saying it and would look at me, as if to say, "If you were sensible, you should go wander on your own." So, I worked even harder, always ranking first in every subject, taking care of my younger brother, cleaning, and cooking. I hoped everything would stay the same, that my parents would still cherish me, and my home would remain warm. Slowly, I stopped daring to hope for these things. I only wished my parents wouldn't abandon me, that I could stay at home. I also knew clearly that no matter how much I did, I could never win back my parents' love. Blood ties are the hardest chasm to cross in this world. In the face of blood, any effort is meaningless. After graduating from middle school, I was forbidden from continuing my education. If it weren't for my teacher securing financial aid for me, I might be hauling bricks on a construction site now. Our relationship only slowly improved after I started working and gained the ability to provide for them. I know they don't truly love me, but what does it matter? Even feigned concern can keep me warm for a long time. Before Jason Gu's accident, I lived in a self-constructed illusion of happiness, and I relished every bit of it. Honey, come with me for my prenatal check. Up. Sarah Chun stroked her belly, looking just like any expectant mother eagerly awaiting her child's arrival. Only I knew that her purpose for carrying this child was solely to save Jason Gu. Sure, I accompanied her there. The prenatal check-up results were perfectly normal. She linked her arm with mine. Honey, you should get a health check. Up too. You work too hard usually. Hearing this, I was almost certain that Sarah Chun had indeed been reborn. She knew that in a few days, I would be diagnosed with brain cancer. Why get checked? I'm in perfect health. My illness was already cured last year. How could I possibly let the tragedy repeat itself? Since I've been given a second chance, I'm naturally going to take good care of myself. She stared at me blankly for a moment, then nodded. All right, whatever you say. I sneered inwardly. My place in her heart was indeed as insignificant as ever. Even knowing I might get cancer, she didn't insist I get checked. We returned home, and she chattered nonstop about our dating days along the way. I listened without responding to her. As we neared home, she suddenly said, Honey, all these years, I'm sorry. In my past life, if she'd said that, I'd have forgiven her without a second thought. But now, I no longer needed her apology. That night, she came over holding a quilt. Honey, I'm pregnant. I can't be alone. I blocked the door, looking down at her. Last time, she did the same, saying she wanted a child. I thought our relationship would rekindle, but it was just her trap. Back then, she didn't know Jason Gu and I weren't blood brothers. She wanted a child to donate bone marrow to him later. That was when my true disappointment in her began. I couldn't imagine that as a mother, she would bear a child just to save her first love. It wasn't until I was near death that I learned she and Jason Gu were each other's first loves. Before, she told me everything she did was to help atone for my sins, and I believed her. But in her heart, Jason Gu was the one who rescued her from the abyss. Back when she had just started university, Jason got into a fight for her and was detained. She saw it as a proof of his love, but forgot that because of it, she was publicly reprimanded by the school and forced to move out of the dorm. Jason confronted her stepfather for her, but how did he get those photos? I never wanted to dig into Sarah Chen's past, only hoping to build a future with her. Yet, every single thing she did was enough to destroy me. Honey, what's wrong? I snapped back to reality and coldly replied, Wasn't it you who suggested separate rooms? Changed your mind? She blinked, forcing an awkward smile. Well, it's because I'm pregnant, isn't it? I had no patience left for her excuses. I've gotten used to being apart. Her body swayed, the quilt in her hands falling to the ground. You've gotten used to it? Used to life without me? I let out a light laugh. When were you ever mine? Her face flushed crimson, eyes darting away, unable to meet my gaze. After a long pause, she asked weakly, Did you hear something bad about me? I shook my head slowly. Do we really need others' words to see what's wrong between us? She bit her lip, her eyes gradually reddening, taking a deep breath. I finally spoke the words I'd held in all these years. Sarah Chun, I'm human too. I get hurt and sad just like anyone else. We've come this far. There's no going back to how things were, unless I had some program in my brain that could wipe away everything you've done with one click. I could never love you again in this lifetime, let alone forgive you. Tears fell from her eyes, large and heavy, but I can apologize. I can make up to you. Weariness crept into my voice. Some wounds, once inflicted, can never be undone. She owed me 2 lives. How could she ever make up for that? Sarah Chun reached out to grab my sleeve, but I pushed her hand away. Her hand froze mid-air. I stopped looking at her, closed the door directly, shutting her out of my world, and finally felt relief. Early the next morning, my parents came over. It was the same old routine. They brought chicken soup. Truth is, eating chicken gives me stomach aches. But before, to make them happy, I'd always finish it and say it was delicious. Jian, you work so hard. You really need to nourish yourself more. I pushed the soup away and looked straight at them. Just say what you want. They looked displeased. This child, do mom and dad always have to want something from you just to bring you food? Don't they? I stood up and grabbed my coat. If there's nothing, then I'm heading to work. Wait. My mom rushed over and stopped me. Well, there's something. We're family, so I'll just say it straight. I watched her in silence. Your younger brother, he needs a bone marrow donation. You share the same blood type. Go get tested for a match. No. Sarah Chun emerged from the bedroom. Jian won't go. You should leave. My mother fumed, hands on her hips. I'm going. I cut off their argument. Sarah Chun rushed to my side, stunned. Honey, don't you know Jason Gu doesn't deserve your kindness? He's a complete jerk. I pushed her hand away again. Jason is my younger brother. Of course, I'll go for the matching test. My parents happily pulled me along, saying they'd make sure to nourish me properly afterward. I followed them downstairs, painting a picture of loving parents and a filial child. At the hospital, I underwent the examination and proceeded to the matching test. Just like in my past life, it was a success. Jian, you have to save your brother. He's your parents' lifeline. My mother nearly dropped to her knees before me. My father chimed in. Jian, we may have neglected you in the past, but our love for you is no less than for your brother. As long as you donate bone marrow for Jason, we'll make it up to you. We promise. See, after all, their family I've lived with for over a decade. They know exactly what I need most. Their relationship, their apologies, their regard. They all know it. Sarah Chin held my hand. Honey, if you're not feeling well, don't donate. You've done enough for the Gu family over the years. Have they ever shown you any gratitude? My parents instantly took offense upon hearing this, and the group erupted into another argument. It only stopped after the doctor scolded them. I agreed to donate the bone marrow. After all, he is my younger brother. Jason Gu had somehow appeared behind me, and upon hearing my words, a flash of triumph gleamed in his eyes. During the meal, my parents deliberately stepped out to let us brothers talk. As they left, they specifically reminded Jason, have a good chat with your brother. He's going to save your life this time. He nodded obediently. The moment the hospital room door closed, he leaned back against the headboard, sizing me up with eyes full of envy. Don't expect me to thank you. My parents raised you all these years, even if they demanded your life. You should give it to me. His matter of fact tone amused me. Exactly. So that's why I agreed. Isn't it? He curled his lip. That worn out shoe. You actually married her. As his words faded, the hospital door was gently pushed open. Daddy. A little boy ran in and threw himself into Jason Gu's arms. Did he just call Jason Gu daddy? How could Jason have a 4 or 5-year-old son? I looked toward the door. Sarah Chun was standing there, and beside her was a flashily dressed, alluring woman. She looked familiar. After a moment's thought, I recalled she was probably Jason's college classmate, named Crystal Sun. I think she'd attended Jason's birthday party back then. Quite rude, so the impression stuck. Jason instinctively hugged the child, eyeing me warily. My parents hurried in after them, stammering an explanation. This is... Sarah Chen sneered. Mom, don't you even recognize your own grandson? My parents shot her a furious glare but didn't refute it. Sarah Chen continued. Since Jason Gu has a child, shouldn't he also be tested for a match? Crystal's son pulled her child into her arms and pointed at Sarah Chen. What match? I only brought my son here because you said Jason's condition isn't good. Jason Gu looked at Sarah Chen with a fierce glare. Sarah Chun was frightened by his gaze and took a few steps back. I stood up and studied her, smiling at everyone. How could such a young child donate bone marrow? I'll do it instead. Sarah Chun stared at me wide-eyed. My parents looked stunned too, while only Jason Gu wore a slight smirk. As if everything was going according to plan, I took Sarah Chen home, and she broke down sobbing in the car. Jason Gu is such a scoundrel. Why would you save him? I asked her softly. Do you want him to die? Sarah Chen clenched her fists. I want all three of them to die, especially that little bastard. I glanced at her stomach. She was already a mother, yet she held no mercy for a child. Right? How could I forget that in my past life, she held our daughter by the neck, dangling her over the edge of the rooftop, while threatening me to donate bone marrow for Jason Gu. I agreed. After I finished the surgery, she told me she had abandoned our daughter. She never wanted my child. She hated me. To this day, I still don't understand why she harbored such deep hatred for me. Was it simply because I indirectly caused Jason Gu's car accident? On my deathbed, Jason Gu told me my daughter was already dead. She froze to death on that winter night when Sarah Chun abandoned her. Honey, did I scare you? Sarah Chun wiped her tears and looked at me with a pitiful expression. I was just angry that they bullied you. Really? She blurted out. Of course. As I turned away, a sinister smile curled at the corner of Sarah Chen's lips. Would Jason Gu let himself be manipulated by her so easily? After dealing with him for so many years, I knew him quite well. The next noon, some photos were circulating wildly in the company group chat. These were the photos of Sarah Chun that Jason Gu had shown me that night. Just as I saw the photos in the group chat, the bedroom door was violently slammed open. Sarah stood there, her hair disheveled, her face frighteningly pale, her hand trembling violently as she clutched her phone. Why? She stared at me blankly, her gaze unfocused. Her question caught me off guard. Let me have someone take the photos down first. Suddenly, her face twisted into a vicious glare, her eyes bulging, looking rather horrifying. You. Before I could finish, she hurled her phone at me with all her might. I dodged hastily. Why would you do this? I've been trying so hard to please you these days, even willing to have your child. What more do you want? She actually claimed those photos were all my doing. Why are you saying I did it? She suddenly let out a piercing laugh. Wasn't it you who paid to get those photos from that old bastard? I was stunned. It wasn't me. It was Jason Gu. She lunged at me suddenly, but fortunately, I reacted quickly and pinned her down, though her sharp nails still scratched my neck. Even now, you still want to lie to me? I sighed helplessly and recounted what happened that night. I had already burned those photos, but I never expected Jason Gu still had copies. Jason Gu used your photos to threaten me not to marry you. You had already broken up by then, and he was with Crystal Sun. Why would he do that? Sarah Chen frowned, staring into my eyes, afraid to miss any change in my expression. You're saying Jason Gu bought those photos? I don't know how he got them, but that night, it was indeed him who came to threaten me with them. She slumped onto the bed in despair, mumbling incoherently under her breath. After a long while, she finally looked up, her eyes severely swollen and her lips bitten raw in several places. Then why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell her? In my heart, she's always been both fragile and strong. As long as that matter wasn't brought up, she was stronger than anyone. I couldn't bear to make her relive those memories again. She seemed to understand my intention, crying and laughing in turns. So it was Jason Gu. It was him all along. 10. I had someone retrieve the photos, but Sarah Chen hid in her room, refusing to come out. She said her stepfather George Chen told her that I was the one who bought those photos. Not only that, George Chen described my appearance and accent in detail, which convinced her. Jason Gu promised to help her find and destroy the photos. So over the years, almost all her savings went to him. But in the end, it was all just a scam by Jason Gu. Early the next morning, my parents arrived. The day for the bone marrow donation had come, and the surgery was already scheduled. Perhaps afraid I might back out, they showered me with concern, made vows, and promised they would make up to me properly in the future. I smiled and nodded, once again becoming the son who tried his best to please them. Just as we were about to leave, Sarah Chen rushed out. Tear stains still marked her face. Are you really going to donate bone marrow to him? He's the one who ruined our lives. My mother pushed her aside. This is a matter for our Gu family. It's not your place to speak. My father snorted coldly. This wife of yours is becoming more and more unreasonable, yet you treat her like a treasure. I escorted Sarah Chun back to the room. You should know, nothing will go wrong. She wore a dazed expression. The bone marrow transplant was a complete success, which didn't surprise me. The doctor still cautioned, you must closely monitor your physical condition. Rejection reactions may occur later. I stayed in the hospital for a week, and Sarah Chun visited every day. Her baby bump was already showing. In 4 more months, I'd have a lovely daughter. At that thought, my heart finally felt less icy. Sarah Chun was an excellent cook. Back when we first started dating, she often brought me homemade meals. As soon as she opened the lunchbox, the entire office would fill with the aroma of her cooking. Why are you so sure nothing will go wrong? Sarah Chun asked me while helping me serve the dishes. I was puzzled. Wasn't it like this in the previous life? Don't you remember? She put down her chopsticks, blinking at me with a hint of confusion and bewilderment. What are you talking about? What previous life? This time, I was the one stunned. She isn't reborn? For a moment, I didn't know how to ask her that, so I tentatively said, why are you suddenly so nice to me? She awkwardly smoothed her hair and cleared her throat. Because I realized you've always been really good to me. Her fingers were tightly clenched in her palm, a gesture she might not even be aware of. One she always made whenever she lied. I see. After she left, I'd have my assistant check. When she started getting involved with Crystal Sun, that evening, my assistant found out, 2 months ago, around the time her attitude toward me suddenly changed. Watching her leave with relief, I couldn't help but laugh. So that's it. She found out Jason Gu had been deceiving her all these years, which is why her attitude toward me changed so drastically. If she hadn't discovered Crystal Sun and the child, if she hadn't found out that Jason Gu used her hard, earn money to buy a house for that mother and son, then now she would still be threatening me with the child in her womb, just like in my previous life. But by helping Jason Gu like this, she didn't end up well either. When she was sick and hospitalized, Jason Gu and Crystal Sun were holding their wedding ceremony. She foolishly kept waiting for Jason Gu to come marry her. In the end, all she got was her bastard stepfather. Jason Gu handed Sarah Chun over to George Chun. I glanced at the calendar. George Chun would be out of prison soon. 3 years ago, I had someone report George Chun for gambling and assault, and he was sentenced to 3 years. That's why Sarah Chun had these 3 free years. But now his sentence is almost up. After I was discharged from the hospital, Jason Gu was also brought home by my parents. For months later, Sarah Chun gave birth. It was a daughter. I waited outside the delivery room for news, my legs trembling uncontrollably. Only when the doctor brought out my daughter did my heart finally settle back in my chest. In my past life, I had only caught a few distant glimpses of my daughter. Sarah Chun never let me get close to her. I could only steal a few looks when she wasn't paying attention. I booked the best postpartum care center, and she recovered quite well. When she was fully recovered and returned home, my assistant and lawyer were waiting at the door. Sarah Chun looked at us, puzzled. What's going on? I cut straight to the point. Let's get a divorce. Pointing at the daughter in my arms, her voice trembling, she said, I just gave birth to your child. And you want a divorce? I corrected her promptly. You didn't have this child for me. You know exactly why she came into this world. Her eyes wavered, but she still insisted defiantly. I don't understand what you're talking about. Shall we call Jason Gu's attending physician? You knew he was going to wake up 6 months before he did, and you knew he needed a bone marrow transplant. But after all, I'm just his brother. The chances of failure were still quite high. She didn't want to take risks, so she thought having a child would provide an extra layer of security. Even if I failed, there would still be this child. But right after learning she was pregnant, she saw Crystal Sun visiting Jason Gu in the hospital room. That's when she realized Jason Gu had been using their money to support another woman all these years. They even had a child together. With things having come to this, she had to secure a fallback for herself. The child could just help ease the tension between us. which is why she rushed over excitedly to tell me she was pregnant. I advised her, even if we don't divorce now, we'll still have to later. She pounded the couch forcefully. I won't divorce. I won't divorce. I sighed. I'll hire a professional legal team to take you to court, and by then, you'll get nothing. I had plenty of ways to make her leave with nothing. The reason I tolerated her all along wasn't that I couldn't deal with her, but that I couldn't bear to see her too humiliated. Ji Yen. She clumsily approached me, grabbing my arm. I know I was wrong. I was deceived by Jason Gu before. I already explained it to you. I forcefully brushed her hand away. The reason doesn't matter to me anymore. All I know is that the years of hurt are irreversible. I have no right to forgive her on behalf of my past self who endured so much pain, even to the point of near death. And even less right to forgive her for my deceased daughter. Do you have to be so heartless? Is there someone else? I refuse to believe you'd suddenly treat me like this. Even now, she didn't understand. You know very well this wasn't sudden. She covered her face and wept. I patiently explained once more. If we divorce now, I'll provide monthly support, but you must give me custody of our daughter. No, I can't. I won't give her to you. I took a deep breath and warned her. George Chen will be released soon. Do you really think it's safe for our daughter to stay with you? She stepped back, collapsing onto the sofa, staring at me in disbelief. She never imagined I would threaten her like this. Jian, do you really hate me this much? I didn't know how to answer her. I don't hate her. To me, you're no different from a stranger, and I don't extend my utmost kindness to strangers. Her lips trembled as she murmured, a stranger, just sign it. I pushed the divorce agreement toward her. She glanced at me cautiously, picked up the pen on the table, but just as she was about to sign, she slammed the pen back down heavily. Jian, I'm sorry. I know I went too far before, but I truly will change. She wiped the tears from her face with her sleeve. I've thought a lot these past few days. I've fallen in love with you. I can't leave you, and I can't leave our daughter either. Give me one more chance. Please? Just this one chance. I leaned back on the sofa, exhausted. I've given you too many chances already. I can't trust you anymore, and I don't dare to. Hearing this, Sarah Chan buried her head in her arms on the table and began to cry. Her shoulders shook violently. After more than 10 minutes, she lifted her head, avoiding my gaze, grabbed the pen, and signed the divorce agreement. A month later, Sarah Chun and I divorced. The day after the divorce, George Chun was released from prison. I no longer had time to focus on Sarah Chun because Jason Gu's bone marrow transplant had failed, showing signs of rejection. You have to save your younger brother. The doctors can perform a second surgery. Jason Gu lay in the hospital bed, eyes sunken, groaning in pain. Crystal's son was wiping his face beside him when he shoved her to the ground. Seeing my silence, my parents grew impatient. When will the surgery be? I looked at them coldly. Did I say I'd donate bone marrow a second time? Are you just going to watch your brother die? After a moment's thought, I asked sincerely, well, why not? Jason Gu stopped groaning and sat up in bed. Bro, I'm begging you. I don't want to die. I'm still young. Besides, this is because of you. If it weren't for you, don't pin such a heavy blame on me. I cut him off. You only came to threaten me because you're afraid of losing Sarah Chen. Your cash cow. Your car accident was entirely your own fault. My father raised his hand to hit me, but his wrist was caught in a tight grip. Honestly, instead of wasting time with me here, you'd be better off looking for other potential bone marrow donors. They exchanged bewildered glances. It suddenly dawned on me. I forgot. You don't have the money. My mother immediately nodded. Yes, Jian, how about this? You give us 2 million. Consider it a gesture of goodwill. I tried to hold it in, but failed, laughing until my stomach ached. Do you really think I'd give you that money? Why wouldn't you? We raised you. Shouldn't you repay us? The assistant pulled out a stack of bills. Expenses I'd covered for them over the past 3 years. After Jason Gu's accident, they kicked me out of the house. Later, my father tried his hand at investing, not only losing all the family savings, but also the house. Even so, he was still over $1 million in debt. I paid off their debts and bought them a new home. which slightly eased the tension between us. But not long ago, my father dove into another investment venture and lost the new house as well. I couldn't help but sigh. If the house were still here, Jason Gu might have had a chance. But what a shame. My mother immediately burst into tears, pounding on my father's chest. It's all your fault. You're the one who ruined our son. Over the years, I've long since repaid them for raising me. Jason Gu leaned against the wall, barely steadying himself. Even so, you still have an obligation to support our parents. Now, he suddenly knows the law. He wasn't wrong, and I agreed, but added, I'll provide the minimum standard of alimony to them each month. How you spend it, or who you give it to, is your freedom, but if it runs out, you'll have to wait until next month's payment. With that, I didn't linger any longer and turned to leave the hospital room. Just as I reached my doorstep, I saw 2 police officers standing there. Are you Ian Gu? I nodded yes. They showed me their badges and then asked, Do you know Sarah Chen? Yes. Their expressions turned grave. Sarah Chen has committed murder. Your number was the only one in her contacts. Sarah Chen killed someone? Who? Her stepfather, George Chen. My heart sank. I remember Jason Gu had mentioned before that Sarah Chen once tried to kill George Chen but failed. I never expected she'd actually go through with it years later. After learning the details at the police station, the officers asked me to visit Sarah Chen. They said she had refused to speak since her arrest, stalling the case entirely. She greeted me with a gentle smile the moment she saw me. She seemed even more composed than before, and noticeably softer. Sorry for the trouble, having you come all this way to see a murderer. I stayed silent. After the divorce, I realized how much security you'd given me all those years. Without you, it felt like being thrown into a gladiator arena, utterly terrifying. She leaned over the table, her breathing faint, but I killed him. I finally did what I'd wanted to for nearly a decade. It was worth it, wasn't it? I wanted to answer her, but words failed me. As soon as visiting hours ended, I left. The police told me Sarah Chen had confessed to everything. A few months later, she was sentenced to life in prison. My parents came crying at my doorstep and causing scenes at my office every day, trying to force me to save Jason Gu. I remained unmoved, simply having the company hire extra security. Jason had been ravaged by illness, skin and bones, eyes bulging like a gasping demon. His throat rasped hoarsely. He could only stare at me wide-eyed, unable to utter a single word. I sat by his bedside. Crystal's son has already left with the child. Really, how could such a young child donate bone marrow? It's too cruel. As his uncle, I couldn't bear it, so I sent them abroad. Jason reached out, trying to grab me, but he was powerless. I'm going abroad too, to work at headquarters. I leave tonight and probably won't make it to your funeral. Don't blame me, brother. Before, I had many chances to leave this place, but for our parents, for Sarah Chen, I stayed. Now, it's finally the right time to go. That evening, I smoothly boarded the plane and flew far away with my daughter. In the days that followed, I continued to send alimony to my parents as previously agreed. However, they had borrowed a considerable amount of money to cover Jason Gu's medical expenses. Jason Gu passed away in the 2nd year after I left, and after his death, the elderly couple completely lost their pillar of support. They were hounded by creditors and forced to hide everywhere. In the end, it was the police who contacted me, informing me that the elderly couple had frozen to death under a bridge. At that time, I was at my daughter's school performance. She had grown into the finest version of herself, nurtured by my love and hopes.